All right. I guess we're live, right?
Yes, we are.
All
How's it
right.
going?
Awesome. Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to Neon's first live stream. I'm your host, Mahmoud, and I'm here with my colleague, Raouf. We're both on the product team here at Neon, and we're both developer advocates. So let's give people a few kind of like minutes to join. And yeah, also, if you're already here and you're in the chat, like just say hi, tell us where you're from, and yeah, if you already have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat.
Yeah, awesome. So we got a lot of things to talk about. Can you walk us through
Yeah,
like some of the things that we're going to talk about?
yeah, sure. So we'll be kind of recapping everything that happened in the month of January. So like new content, like we released, upcoming events that we have and we'll be part of. We have two cool demos, kind of like I won't spoil too much. And we also, yeah, we'll just talk about different stuff. But yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think we can start by some news about our GitHub repository.
Yeah, sure. So let me start. So let's kick things off. I will share my screen now. And the first kind of like thing that we're celebrating is the Neon repo has crossed 6,000 GitHub stars. So thanks everyone for those who started the repo. If you haven't, go start it. And yeah, it's pretty cool. If you're interested in Rust and systems, definitely check out the code. There's a lot of stuff. You can even like install it locally, play around with it. But yeah, so that's kind of like the first thing. The second thing I wanted to mention is our website. So if you go to neon.tech, this actually has been rebuilt using or has been migrated to Next.js 13. And oh, hey, well. And yeah, it's been migrated to Next.js 13. It uses the app directory. The code is open source, so you can actually go there. And yeah, it's like in Neon database slash website. Then there's a next folder, and inside it you'll just see all of the code. If you find any issues, file an issue, create a pull request. Everything is public, so that's awesome. And yeah, next thing we have is upcoming events. So we will be at JSWorld. This is in Amsterdam, right? And it will happen on February 8th. And we have a talk by our head of product, Anna, and she will talk about staging is dead, long live previews. So this is a talk that will cover how you can use Neon as part of your development workflow. So with Neon, we have a feature called branching. We'll talk about that in more detail, but you can leverage this feature as part of like your CI/CD pipeline, and you'll be able to get a preview database for every pull request. So if you're already familiar with preview deployments using platforms like Vercel, Netlify, Cloudflare Pages, you'll be able to have a database as part of like CI/CD, and you can do a bunch of cool stuff with it. But yeah, anything I'm missing, Rove?
Yeah, no, I think it's a pretty cool conference. There are gonna be like a lot of people there, and also there are a bunch of speakers. So yeah, and Anna's talk is gonna be pretty cool. Um, I know that people are familiar with how they use GitHub and branches with GitHub and Vercel previews. So you can just imagine the same using Neon, kind of. I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's gonna be pretty
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, and it will be kind of like recorded anyway. But yeah, so also yeah, if you're in Amsterdam and you're going there, let us know. And yeah, now let's actually talk about content and stuff that we published during the month of January. So first things first is bringing Postgres to Replit with Neon. So in case you're unfamiliar, Replit, it's replit.com. They're a platform that, like, it's a cloud-based IDE, and you can create projects, you can run them. They take care of all the infrastructure for you, and you can just create a new project, and you can create it super fast, and you can have add-ons that enable you to do a bunch of stuff. There's like a database add-on that was like a key value store. You can just connect it with Git. You can do a bunch of cool stuff with Replit, but they wanted to add support for Postgres databases, and they decided to use Neon for that, which is awesome. So you can just say like one click, you can say like create a database. They right now charge $1 a day, and they use cycles. This is their credit system. So if I click buy cycles, I don't have any right now, but then you'll be able to just instantly provision a Postgres database. You can check out the blog post. It has a video in it that just shows the experience. Like if I show you right now, you'll be able to just see it. It's very kind of like super fast. Yeah, you just click, use 100 cycles, and then you'll be able to have a connection string to database, Postgres, and you can just connect to it right away. And Replit has something similar to Copilot. It's called Ghostwriter, and you can use it to write SQL queries as well, which is very, very cool. So this is kind of like an exciting integration because Replit uses Neon's API to provide that feature without really worrying about the infrastructure part. Like all of that is handled by Neon. And yeah, if you're interested in having a similar use case, get in touch with us. We're very open to building integrations and collaborating with other developer tool platforms.
Yeah, we see more and more users like using actually the API to come up with some cool scenarios like scenario analysis. So where they create all these projects and branches and they run them against each other to see like the kind of results and compare a branch to another. So yeah,
We
if you
have an article on that, right?
yeah, we do. We have it on the blog. I think it's called yeah, it's branching with the Neon API. I think we just missed it.
I missed it. It's up.
Yep.
Branching Postgres with the Neon API. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in this one, we can share the link in the chat. Let me drop it here. And yeah, so yeah, it covers like what is branching, how to use it. We'll also give an overview about that, but you can check out this blog post for like a cool use case using Neon's API. Now, the next article is the one I wrote. It's how to deploy your own Mastodon instance. So, in case you're unfamiliar with Mastodon, it's kind of like an open source social network. It's supposed to replace Twitter. It's been around for a long time. However, it kind of got a bunch of interest from people because like Twitter has been kind of intense lately. But yeah, it kind of just teaches you how to deploy your own Mastodon instance from a Docker image to fly.io and using a bunch of other cool tools. So you'll be using Neon for the database. You'll be using Upstash for Redis. This is used like for caching. There's also Postmark for sending emails. There's also, I believe, uh, yeah, like that's mostly it. And then like you deploy it, and it's really really nice. Like I'm a huge fan of Fly.io, and I think they're very underrated right now. But yeah, so it's pretty cool. You should check it out if you're interested. And I go in detail on how to do everything step by step. But yeah, that's also something that we published during the month of January. Now let's do content kind of like published on other blogs. And this one was supercharging Postgres on Neon with PolyScale. And PolyScale, what they do is they're a serverless database edge cache. So you can put it in front of your database and it will cache queries. But what's neat is the cache is distributed around the world. So depending on where the request is coming from, and this request is cached, it will be served from an edge location for PolyScale. Now, I think this is really interesting if you have kind of like a traditional server full app where you have like a long running server, not using something like serverless or edge functions. And then you can just use PolyScale in front of it and it would just speed up your queries. Pretty cool. And we're working on a guide on it. We're working on adding a guide to our documentation. So that's pretty cool stuff. And this article shows how to use PolyScale with Neon. And it's really interesting. You should check it out if you really care about having the lowest possible latencies and having like a distributed kind of like cache.
Yeah, it's actually pretty
Yeah.
cool because yeah, so when you use cache, you basically drop some of the queries up like all the way down to 10 milliseconds, depending on where your server is. But I've used this in one of the project that I have, and it's quite simple to use PolyScale. You just copy paste the host of the database, and that's it, and it just
Yeah, I can
redirects
actually
to your
show it. So it's
database.
kind of easy, like easier to understand. But the way it works is you can think of it as it sits in front of your data. Like it acts like, to me, my understanding is it's kind of like a router that just receives a query or a request and then just checks like, oh, where do I actually serve the response from? So it's kind of like you can just say, let's do create a new cache. All you need to specify is the host and the port, and then you will get a database URL that you can use when deploying your apps. And then PolyScale takes care of the rest. And it doesn't really do anything with the database. It just takes care of caching. So it's pretty cool. And Rove like will talk more about how he used it in one of his projects. But yeah, that's pretty much it for new content. I think we covered everything. Rove, do you want to go and talk about your project, GPT to PG Chrome
Oh,
extension?
you want me to start with that one first? Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Let's see.
since we're talking about PolyScale, well, I've
Yeah.
just used it like in front of my Vercel function, and it was as easy as you showed. You don't have to specify any password or user or anything. You just need to put the information regarding the host, and then PolyScale knows if we receive that query, then it caches it in. Otherwise, it will send the query to the database. But yeah, I can show one of the projects that I've been working on lately. Let me make sure that I'm sharing the right screen. All right, here I have a project on Neon, but I'll get back to this one. So here, I actually was working on a Chrome extension that I call GPT-2PG. So uh, I don't know if you guys are
Okay.
familiar with ChatGPT. I guess I assume
Can
that.
you just sorry for interrupting. Can you just make
Yeah,
your like browser window full screen and zoom in a little bit?
yeah. Is this better?
Yeah, a lot better. Yeah, I think it's
Okay,
better.
yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so I think you can see the queries here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Let me actually go into the new chat. So if you guys are familiar with, I don't know if you guys are familiar with ChatGPT. I assume that yes, if you've been on the internet in the past month or so, you probably heard of ChatGPT. But basically, it's freaking out a lot of developers out there because it knows how to write code, and sometimes the code is pretty good, and sometimes it's okay. So it's interesting to see how accurate it can be. But for developers like us who are not sure about how to write SQL queries, then what you can do, you can ask it, for example, to create a user table on Postgres. For example, I'm just using a very simple example here. And okay, yeah, now it's working. Wow, because it's down most of the time sometimes. So here it's writing a query, but the problem is like sometimes you have a query like this, and then you want to run this query and you don't know what to do. So I created actually an extension. I think I have to let it finish this thing in order for it to save the result. But here, if I refresh the page, I need to refresh it apparently for it to work. So if I refresh the page, there you go. Okay. Hmm. Hold on a second. Did I do anything? Yeah, there you go. That's what I was expecting. So here, when you refresh the page, what happens is that you have this little button that shows up that asks you to run in SQL, and I can run the SQL, and I can also ask it to insert a value to my table. Okay, so here it says that your query didn't return any result, which is expected. It's just to create a table, and I've inserted a value to my user table. Then Okay, this is simple. I can run the query and I can select it, select everything. Users. Table. All right, my examples are definitely oversimplified, but it's just for the sake of showing what it does. Um, well, in case it doesn't work, I can definitely run it somewhere else.
I mean, if it works in terms of just the run SQL, you'll be able to see it in your Neon project, right?
So yeah, so the thing is, here I'm not using Neon. Here I think I'm using just the default database. So here, yeah, I'm getting the value. But yeah, and thanks to Mahmoud and other people who gave me this feedback, they wanted to run this actually against their own database. So what I did is I just added the possibility of doing this here. And actually, let me go to Neon and create a new project. Let's call it like demo. And let's have it in Frankfurt. Let's create a project. And all I'm going to do is copy and paste this uh, connection string right here. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to set SSL mode to require. I'm going to save this. And I'm going to run the same queries on my database. All right, I can run some values, and then I can also select, and should be doing the same. And if I go to my Neon project and actually go to tables, then I can see that my value is right here.
What? That is so
Yeah.
cool. So wait. So just to get this straight, what you're
Yeah.
saying is, so ChatGPT, in case someone is not familiar, it's kind of like a conversational AI created by Open AI. Yeah, a conversational AI created by Open AI. And what Rove did is it's an extension that goes through the different code blocks on the page for ChatGPT, extracts the query, and allows you to run it against an actual database.
Mhm.
So, honestly, it's super cool. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit more. Like, how does it work? How are you doing this magic?
Oh, yeah. So what I'm doing here is basically, well, my Chrome extension is connected to so it sends the query to a Vercel serverless function,
Hmm.
and then I'm using Node.pg to run the particular query. And then
Okay.
if you specify the database, then it's just gonna send the query to your database. Otherwise, it's gonna send it to like a default database that I have there.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm using PolyScale. So instead of using sending all the queries to Neon, I'm
Hmm.
using um, I'm using PolyScale. Say, for example, if I'm running this select from user many times, then this result should come from PolyScale instead of coming from Neon. So I'm not querying my database every time. So if people want to
Okay.
run the same query many
So the
times, then
cached response will be returned rather than the actual, like, so you wouldn't be talking to
yes,
the database right directly. You're actually returning the cached response.
correct. Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it was pretty simple to do, and I'm going to be
So how do you
sharing. Okay.
actually grab the SQL query?
Oh yeah, quite simple. Actually, if you go to ChatGPT, if you look at this code right here, can you see
Not
the elements
really,
here?
but so what are you like looking for a specific class?
Oops,
But
sorry.
okay, I think Rauf might be having some
Yeah,
issues.
I just had a technical problem with Siri just now. It played all
Ah,
my music at once, so I couldn't hear anything. So that's sorry. Yeah. So let me actually show you. So if you open, if you select this code block here, you can see
mhm.
that actually it injects this a specific CSS here. It says language SQL, and what I do is that I just look for this language SQL actually class in the elements, and this is how I
Okay.
extract the query itself. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Very
And then
cool.
what I do, yeah, I go to the parents and I add this specific button, and then that's what the button does. So it's not,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not very complicated.
Hey,
But
it's
yeah,
good. It's cool for me. I don't know. Like to me, it's kind of pretty cool for you to be able to test queries. And since someone can bring their own database by just grabbing the connection string, but this just works for Postgres, right? Because you're using Node Postgres as the client.
yes.
So someone can use like MySQL or Mongo or something else.
Yeah, actually, yeah. So if I remove p from here, it's going to tell you that the connection string is not valid because it's
Okay.
expecting the Postgres. Yeah, it's expecting the Postgres database.
Hmm.
But yeah, and I think like one of the next steps, or the next step is definitely to be able like to use things like branching. And
That'd be
uh,
pretty cool. Yeah,
yeah, so
I can
if you're
explain what branching in. I'll explain what branching is. But yeah.
yes, but this is a way just to give you the to hand it over to you, and you can explain more branching to us. But basically, yeah, it would be nice if you can bring in your Neon database, and instead of using the queries against like a real table that you have on
Mhm.
development or staging, then you would just create a branch from there and then run your queries against that particular branch. So for you not to break anything for anybody. Hey, I can't read the name, but hello. I think we got a question that says, "Can Neon support horizontal scaling?" Do you want to take that, or want to take it?
Sure. Yeah, feel free to take it.
Yeah. So for now, for now, like when you have a compute node, you just have one compute node, which is your particular endpoint, and um, technically it doesn't scale horizontally, so you just have that particular endpoint in order to query your database. But there are going to be some pretty cool stuff coming in very soon, like auto
Oh yeah.
scaling.
So yeah, we will. Neon will scale vertically. Like we will have auto scaling, and depending on your usage, you will either scale up or down. And if the database doesn't have any activity, it will just scale down to zero. And yeah, the compute will kind of go to sleep.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for the question. And actually, yeah. So I was talking about branching, and I think it's time for you to show us something pretty cool that you've been working on lately.
Yeah,
Um,
sure. So a little bit of a background story. Let me just share my screen real quick. Okay, so now we are in the Neon console, and I have a Neon project, and in this Neon project, I only have one branch. So whenever you create a new Neon project, so in case someone is unfamiliar, Neon is serverless Postgres, and your like when you create a new project, the kind of like a primary branch gets created, and it's called main. And for you to connect to it, you can just use the host and use like a username and password, and then you'll be able to connect to it. Now, a cool feature that Neon has is the idea of branching. So right now, if I go to tables, I have the following tables in my database. I have, let's say, a user, like this users table. It has a bunch of like users who tried this like project. And if I go to branches and I create a new branch, what will happen is I can create this new
can you,
branch. I'm specifying, yeah.
yeah, can you zoom in a
it's-
little bit? Yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah,
hard to
sure.
see. Mhm. Cool.
Okay, I think is this good, or
Yeah,
should I
it's
zoom in a
better.
bit more? Okay, so regarding branching, what happens is with branching, a branch is a copy on write clone of the parent branch. So you can instantly copy the entire database, like the entire, like your entire Neon, kind of like all the databases, as long as like the data with their schema instantly. So let's say I want to call this branch, let's say, I don't know, feature, and I want to use this like locally. I will specify that the parent branch is main, and I'll cover this stuff later. So let's say create branch. And when I do, it says that it was created. And if I go to tables and I pick this newly created branch and I call it feature, you will see that it has all of the tables and just all of the data inside it. It's the same thing. It's just an instant copy right away. So this is pretty cool. And I saw that we got a question: do you support Prisma? Yes. So you can use Prisma to connect to a Neon database very easily. There are a bunch of kind of like caveats, and they're all documented depending on how you're using Prisma and your workflow. But it's kind of like it's in the documentation. But anyway, back to the demo. So right now we have two branches, main and feature. Let's say I want to create a new branch, and I want to create a new branch from this feature branch. I can do that. And I won't include an endpoint. So an endpoint is how you actually connect to a Neon branch. And when a branch doesn't have an endpoint, it acts as a snapshot. So it's kind of just, you creating a copy of the parent branch and it's there. And you can assign an endpoint later to it if you like. But let's say I just want to create a branch here right now from this branch. And let's say I want to create another snapshot from main. Let's say I'll create a branch here and the parent branch is main. Let's just see, let's just leave the name blank and let's create an endpoint as well. All right. So now when you look at the branches, you have a bunch of branches that are created for you, but it's kind of hard for you to see the hierarchy and how the different branches are connected to each other. Like you can see, okay, this branch feature has the parent main, this branch has the parent main, this one has feature. So it's kind of hard to visualize. And we thought about adding this feature to the console of being able to kind of show a tree showing how the different branches are connected to each other. Now, this type of feature is cool, but it's not essential. So yeah, like I was like, okay, so we have an API, and this API just you can do pretty much anything with the console to like using the like anything you can do on the console, you can do with the API as well. And I was like, okay, so I have access to an API. Why don't I build this feature myself? And I kind of did that. So I wanted to be able to visualize neon branches. And this is not live yet. I want to share, like it will be shipped very soon. But my idea was I wanted to be able to see something like this. You will have each node representing a branch, and then you can see how each node is connected to the other. So in our case, we should have like a main branch, then like two branches connected to main, and then one from feature. Now, this, I wanted anyone to be able to just connect their Neon account and be able to do that. And we have an OAuth integration. So I was like, okay, I want to see how I can use that so that technically anyone can just continue with their Neon account and they can just, like see what their branches look like. So when I click continue with Neon, I will be redirected to the OAuth consent screen. So here it says Neon Experimental. That's the name of the app. Is asking for permission on my behalf to do the following kind of like things: creating projects, reading projects, modifying projects, and deleting projects. So pretty much everything. And I'll click authorize. And I'll be redirected if everything works according to plan. Because, demos are always tricky. Okay.
Yay.
So yeah, I'm redirected to my project, and you can see kind of like a list of all projects. I only have one because that's like what the free tier offers. So when I see this neon branching project, I will be able to, let me just zoom in a little bit. I think this should be good. Yeah. So now on the project view, I can see the number of branches I have, the number of endpoints that I have in this project, and how much usage, and also like the project ID if I want to copy it for some reason. And I can see this kind of like structure. So each node now has this green dot, which indicates kind of like, oh, this branch has an endpoint. And if a branch, if the endpoint is not active, this means that the compute node for this branch scaled down to 0. The color will be different. And this node that kind of looks a bit different here than the others is because it doesn't have an endpoint. So like visually, you can distinguish, okay, does this have an endpoint or not? But yeah, that was kind of like the beginning. But then I started to kind of think, okay, what if I can see, what if I can kind of do stuff on this kind of like visualization? Can I create branches? Can I view like a branch detail? So that's kind of what I did. So if I click on one of those nodes, I will see kind of like the slide over, and it gives me just information about a branch, when it was created, the type of endpoint, whether it's active or not, the host, its ID, and yeah. So that's kind of like for this part. And if a branch doesn't have an endpoint, well, it will tell me, hey, this branch does not have an endpoint, and yeah. So technically, I can actually also like delete a branch. So let me actually test this. So this is this branch. I can click delete, and it says, yeah, this action cannot be undone. This will permanently delete your branch. And I click delete. It's deleted. So, and also, as you'll notice, the kind of these two like dots changed colors because now after like a period of inactivity, they just scale down to zero, like the compute instance for each one of these nodes. So all that's pretty cool. Now, because this is an OAuth integration, I'm basically acting on the user's behalf. So there's no need for me to ask the user for an API key to do all of that stuff. But yeah, this was kind of like an experiment just to see, like for me to interact with the Neon API, like try out our OAuth integration, which is working great. And yeah, now that's pretty much it for the demo. In terms of
This is
how
pretty
I built
cool.
it, yeah, in terms of how I built it, so I'm using Next.js 13 as well as TRPC, which is very, very cool. And the reason I use TRPC because our API, it has, it's like neon.tech/docs. We have an API reference, and the API follows the API spec. So let me just search for API. So the Neon API follows the OpenAPI spec. This means that we can actually generate types from this spec. And that's what I did. And that's why I was using TRPC. So I was like, I generate the types from the OpenAPI spec. Then I use these types with TRPC. And then I just have these types on the front end. So it's kind of like a end-to-end type safe experience. So it's very, very cool. Like I'll have a dedicated blog post going over all of the details for this project. But it was really fun, and kind of like it was my mini console playground where I can kind of just experiment with different things. But yeah, it was just kind of for exploration purposes. And also, like you can zoom in, you can drag this. It's a very, very cool library. I'll talk about it more in the
Yeah,
blog post, and
which
you'll be able to see the
which
code.
library you're using for that? For the inference tool?
It's like a D3 library, React V3 tree. So yeah, it makes it easy for you to have this type of hierarchy, and it's built on top of D3. Super cool library if you want to have something, if you want to build something similar. So that was the original purpose for it, like organization charts. Maybe you want to just show a bunch of like dependencies, like I believe this was, yeah, this is the dependency tree for like React repo. You can expand folders. So yeah, it's like nodes can be expanded.
I think it's pretty cool that they have a way to visualize like all those branches and endpoints because it's just like sometimes it's a lot to take in, right? Like because Neon is not just a database, but you can branch it and you have this compute node and storage and everything is kind of separated. So I think it's a pretty cool way to visualize everything and to understand how your project is structured. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
like it. Yeah.
And yeah, honestly, yeah, if like people want this type of thing, let us know. To me, like this project will be live, so you can technically just use it. My idea was like, oh, what if I have just hundreds of branches? Will I be like a list wouldn't be able to tell you kind of like the structure and the hierarchy of everything. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this demo. I want to ship it soon. Keep me accountable, like ask me like, hey, where's this project? You want to try it out? Just so that I can ship it. But yeah, other than that, that's really it for this one. I'm using also Next.auth for handling authentication. And I'm using just a bunch of cool libraries. Like honestly, the Next.js, TRPC, and also I'm going to deploy it to Vercel. It's just a super nice stack to use. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll stop sharing my screen now. And
Yeah.
yeah, do you have any questions? I think we do.
So yeah, we have a question related to pricing. So when is our
I can
pricing
take
basically going
that
to?
one. So in terms of pricing, right now it's in the works. It will be public on March 15th. We'll give you kind of like all of the details. Yeah, that's really it. What else? Do you have an idea on how your pricing is going to look when your Neon is production ready? So Neon production ready, it depends on your use case. So if you want to use like yeah, like for some use cases you can just use it right away. For others, like yeah, you might not be able to. But yeah, hopefully that answers your
Yeah.
question.
So yeah, what we know about pricing is that it is going to be consumption based. So it's going to be a
Yeah.
factor of um, yeah, how much compute and storage you're going to consume. That's what we know so far. But yeah, just stay tuned, and we're gonna have some news very soon. But it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I guess that's it. We can wait just a few more minutes for questions. Otherwise, we can wrap up. But yeah, also, if someone is watching this live stream kind of like async and you're not watching live, again, feel free to leave comments. We'll check them. Or you can reach out to either Rauf and I or myself on Twitter as well. Like, yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Actually, I have a question for you. So why did you use TRPC versus like another library?
So let me just share my screen. In case someone is not familiar with gRPC, they're super cool because, okay, you can see my screen. So gRPC is very cool because you can write so you define your API and like functions. So it's very simple to do. But at the same time, there's kind of like a bunch of helper libraries that you can use on the front end that infer the types from the back end. So if you have a project where your server-side code and your front-end code kind of like are in the same place and they coexist, then you can just infer the types from the backend on the front end, which is just very nice experience. And it doesn't require any code generation; it just infers it. So like in this video, you can see you add a field, you modify it, then it just gets changed on the front end. And because I generated the types from the Open API spec, then I was like, okay, I want to have the types from the Open API spec and then just have them on my TRPC procedures. These are like functions. And on the front end, I'll be able to just, have that sweet autocomplete and type safety where it just tells me like, hey, you can't really pass that. You can pass that. It didn't take too long. But yeah, it was very fun. And I used like to set it up. It was create T3 app to kind of like scaffold this project. Makes it super easy. Because I'm also using Next.auth. I'm using Prisma, Neon for the database, and Next.js for the entire project, and then like finally TRPC. So this is also like a cool way to just scaffold an app very quickly, type safe, end to end. And I'm also using Tailwind CSS because well, I love it. But yeah.
So Starmoon has another question. So let me read it. Do you have integrations for CI/CDs where previous environments get automatic DB
Oh, I think
branches?
we can actually show them like the questions. Oh yeah, we can.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So do you have integrations for CI/CDs where preview environments get automatic DB branches that also get deleted automatically when the PR gets merged? This seems to be still mostly unsolved. Well, we have good news because the answer is yes. And that's actually like the talk that we'll do at JSWorld. And we will kind of talk about this idea because with branching, each branch is its own isolated copy of the database. So when you create a pull request, you'll be able to use Neon's API to create a branch which will be an identical kind of like copy of your production branch. And then you can just use that as like part of your preview deployment, part of like your CI/CD. If you want to like apply, if you want to do tests or you want to apply a schema migration to see if it fails or not, and you should be able to do that very easily. And once you merge your code, you can just also delete this kind of like preview branch you use just for doing the stuff. But yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was like a direct integration of the dashboard would be a real differentiator compared to others. Yeah, well, we're exploring integrations with different developer tool companies. But yeah, I think we have another question.
All right, there you go.
Okay. Is there a neon integrated role / user management for a single database connection? Or why would I do this the regular way with grant statements? Are there specific credentials for branches? So no, you would do this using regular grant statements, right, Ove?
Management for a single database connection that I would do with this regular
Yeah,
grant statements. Are there specific credentials for branches? I think all you need is so are we talking about creating your own branch, like how you would do it? So I think it's the same credentials actually. Well, you can specify, but you can change users, but I think it's the same credentials for.
Yeah, so each branch has its own endpoint, and each endpoint will have its own host name. So when connecting to a branch, you can use the same username and password that you're using for a main branch or let's say a preview branch or any other branch. So does that answer your question? I like let us
What?
know. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you
What?
would use grant statements if you want to have like specific, like on each branch. So you would apply grant statements on a specific branch. And then, like, if you want to make it, I don't know, read only, for example, for a specific user, then you should be able to do that. But I believe we don't support that, right? Like, that's for permissions, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we
We
can
got
check that. But yeah, we'll
yeah.
get back to that later. Are there any performance bottlenecks that you are still working right now? We're always trying to improve performance, but I believe there aren't any known bottlenecks per se. Like you can try it out and test it. Like you have your own kind of like tests and let us know if there are any issues, and we'll look into it. But yeah. I guess we can wait a few more minutes. If anyone's watching live and you have any questions, just feel free to share them right away. But yeah.
Yeah, we got pretty cool questions. So I guess like CI/CD comes up a lot, pricing comes up a lot.
Yeah, all of these questions will be answered in the upcoming few weeks. We have very good stories to tell. There will be a lot of examples, and yeah. Okay, so we have this. Think about using a test branch from the prod database for some testing in CI where I don't want to use the prod credentials. So you
Yeah,
will be able
you
to
can
do that.
totally do that. Yeah. So using the API, you can definitely like not only create a branch, but you can reset password, create a new user, and then apply it to your to the branch that you wanna use. So yeah, if you don't want to use the same credentials, then it's something that you can totally do.
Yeah, like right now. So like the API enables you to create users, right? And then you can just use these users to have these credentials. So anything you can do with the console, you can do with the API. I think almost everything. But yeah,
Almost everything.
yeah. I guess we'll wait a few minutes, like one more minute, and I guess we can wrap up if there aren't any questions. Thank you
Yay.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This was great. We should do it. We should do it often. I don't know if we have another question actually. Oh yeah,
Oh, we do. Okay,
we do.
so are there plans for multi-zone replication? Think Edge DBs. Do you already have a Edge API to access database HTTP and serverless functions? That question is packed, but we're definitely thinking about it and the idea of maybe having like read replicas of a database, and these would be kind of like distributed, and then that will improve the performance when it comes to reads, because they'll be close to your user. But that's not something that's like happening soon, but we're thinking about it. If you already have ideas, you have a specific use case, again, just let us know. It's an open channel. You can DM us, reach out to us. You can email us at feedback@neon.tech. And yeah, but that's pretty much it for that. We give it one more minute. If anyone else has
So
any questions, you can kind of just share it. Otherwise, we can wrap up.
7
And
seconds.
okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. For those who tuned live, if you're watching this async, again, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments down below. You can also just reach out to us if you have any questions. We'd love to help. So, yeah, that's very, very nice. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
All right.